I think there is a real lesson to be learned from the way that India is conducting itself. Notice that it's not interested in putting a ring on its finger. It is being quite geopolitically promiscuous.
How significant is this week's Shanghai Summit, coming as it does amid Donald Trump's chaotic attempts to reshape global trade?
It really depends on one's perspective. From the market perspective, this will have absolutely no implications for the short term. From an economic perspective, even, I think it doesn't really have any real relevance. It's really from a geopolitical perspective. This is a signal, particularly, I would say, by India, that it is willing to stand firm against US pressure, at least in the short term, and that it will forge new relationships with other countries. India is not much of an exporter, and it is definitely not an exporter at all to China. So it could actually conceivably replace the US as an important market by improving its relationship with China. And so I think that from that perspective, from a geopolitical one, it is significant, and it's a message to the US that countries do have alternatives.
China's President Xi has expressed his wish for a new development bank. Would such a bank present a challenge to the US and the very idea of US dominance?
That's an interesting question. I think that it could, on the margin. It's not like the World Bank or the IMF are really tools of American hegemony as important as some of the other tools. And actually, from one perspective, such an alternative to Western institutions would be extremely lucrative for the emerging markets, for the countries sort of in between. Why? Because conceivably, they would now have two competing lending institutions that they could go to and try to pick a better borrowing rate, sort of the way that you would perhaps want to try to shop for a better mortgage rate. And so, yes, I do think that on the margin, this is positive for emerging markets, but does it really erode American hegemony? There's so many other things going on that are eroding American hegemony. I think this is low on the list of priorities.
What does it say, though, the fact that this is being talked about at this summit this week? What does it say about the pace with which Trump has tackled reform in his second presidency that has seen these leaders assemble and ready to present a united front?
Well, to be clear, India is not necessarily presenting a united front with China. Just to be very, very clear here, I think some of that has been overstated a little bit. I think India is still negotiating, and it's negotiating very intelligently. And so what I would say, actually, particularly for an Australian audience, I think there is a real lesson to be learned from the way that India is conducting itself. Notice that it's not interested in putting a ring on its finger. It is being quite geopolitically promiscuous. It knows exactly what it wants, and it's going to get it by illustrating to, yes, even its allies, that they need to work. It needs to be a two-way conversation with the US. So I think that the message that is being sent to the United States of America is that the world doesn't owe it anything, and that it needs to come halfway if it wants to have a dialogue and a long-term geopolitical and trade relationship.
So you don't believe we're seeing a normalising of the relationship yet between India and China. How do you think Donald Trump is going to interpret what is going on this week?
I think he's going to interpret it the way the media has interpreted it, which is sort of an extreme. I don't think he's going to interpret this with nuance. That said, I do think that China and India are normalizing their relations. Just to be clear, I'm just saying it's not an alliance. India is not abandoning its position with the US vis-a-vis China. India and China have actually been talking about normalizing relations for now about 12 months. Several steps have been taken, including at the end of 2024, to resolve some of those border disputes. And I think it just makes a lot of sense from a development perspective, from commercial perspective, that they do so. And so I think this meeting, in the context of Trump's trade war and threats, is taking on this greater importance. Now, I think that Donald Trump will see it the same way. I don't think he's going to, listen to my nuance here. I think he's going to say, wow, okay, so that's how you want to play it, India. And I don't think he's going to back down. I think it's actually going to be quite difficult between India and the US over the next couple of months.
Marko Papic, great to speak to you. Thank you.
Thank you.